last week. Went to Haiti, and I'm going to share some on that. And then there was just some things that the Lord revealed to me throughout the time that I had in Haiti, and then coming home, and just some verses and stuff that really stood out to me, and there's some specific areas that I was really, really challenged in when I was in Haiti on this trip. So when we left for this trip, originally the purpose was my brother, who lives in Haiti, some of you guys know Jason, and his wife Amanda, and their 4 kids. They live in Haiti. And he started a project where when the Hurricane Matthew went across Haiti, it really completely devastated a huge section of that island when that hurricane came across. And my brother was doing hurricane relief work along the shore, and there was 4, 5, 6 towns that had been pretty much completely wiped out from that storm. So they were out doing a bunch of work and stuff on it, and they finished a lot of the work there. And then there was a goat project that came in, where there was about, I think it was like 400 goats that were donated to help people get back on their feet again. And so he took these goats, and then they were looking for places to take them, and they met a guy in town that said he lives in a village about a day's hike back in the middle of nowhere. And he asked for some help from some different organizations. They promised him some help. They promised him some aid. And long story short, everyone that promised him something never showed up. My brother was the only one that actually held true to what he said, and they got about 60 goats donated back to that village that they took back. So that was the first contact that my brother had with the village. And so then he went back and visited the area and hiked in and just had some crazy encounters and met a lot of really amazing people. And the Lord gave him a heart for these people. And what happened from there was basically he heard stories of what some of these people went through in that storm. There was a village of about 90 people that was on the very top of a mountain, and it was a big flat spot initially on the top of the mountain. They had 150-mile-an-hour winds coming through there with the hurricane. It completely wiped the entire village off the face of the mountain. There was nothing left, no trees, no grass. It was completely down to the dirt, completely wiped clean. They found about 60 or so people that had lost their lives right down in the next ravine. About 60 bodies or so they found. And so this village was completely wiped out. And there was another village. This was about a 13-hour hike from the village. So back at about a 10-hour hike, there was another village of about 350 to 400 people that was still intact, that was still there, and they still had most of their houses. And they asked my brother, what kind of aid is he doing there? Because he taking these goats back in. And he said, we're really here just to help you guys out. And so what ways do you guys need help with? And they said, our houses were completely pretty much destroyed in the hurricane. They lived in mud huts made out of sticks with thatch roofs, which thatch is basically long strings of grass that they clump together in bunches and lay on layers on the roof to keep it from leaking. But what had happened was when the storm came through, their houses got destroyed. And so then every time it rained, all their kids were getting sick. And so they had problems, a huge problem with pneumonia and bronchitis in all the kids. And my brother was there. He met lots of people that were really sick. So that was what initiated my brother to start thinking about what he can do for this village. And he started to brainstorm about how he can somehow give these people a house or a roof of some sort that could help them, survive better, through the next storm or through the rains that were coming up this winter and stuff like that. And he decided that he wanted to start a project to build every one of those families a house with a metal roof. And he sat down and met with the committee, and he shared with them what his vision was, and that he wanted to put a house on every one of their homes. They had 150 homes. And so he shared this vision with them, and there were several people in the group that just started crying because they had only ever dreamt of having a house that had a metal roof. Like they had never lived in a house with a metal roof, much less imagined that they themselves would live in a house with a metal roof. And so he had several meetings with them, and finally got the project going, had some donations and stuff come in where we were able to buy all the metal for the project and get all the stuff together, met with them several more times, and decided they would build the house and build the frame, and then as a team we would go in. We would put teams together to put the roofs on. But then as we started processing the way to do this, we realized that how possible was it even going to be to get people from the States in to where it was needed to build these houses. And so we started to brainstorm this. So then myself and my cousin Menno volunteered to go on the first trip to just see if it was going to be possible to get in there. We told the people that if they get the medal there, we'll come and put it on for them. So all these people hiked in. They get 25 sheets of metal per house. They hiked in 25 sheets, each person for their house, 10 hours. They hiked it in on their heads. And so they hiked the metal into their houses, and then we showed up last week at a village, met with the elders. They had about 12 people there that were going to help us carry stuff in. We had a 2,000-watt Honda generator that needed to get hiked all the way up in there to charge our batteries so we could screw the metal down. And the one guy carried the generator on his head for 10 hours back to where we were going to put this stuff in. These guys these are some of the most amazing people I've ever met. They are absolutely beast mode. They are the strongest people I've ever seen. And they don't look strong. They're skinny people, but they are strong. And I mean, carry a generator on your head for 5 minutes and see if you make it. Like, it's brutal. So then we had been told before we went on this trip that these people live in some of the most remote places that still exist. Like, they live in some really, really remote place. And my cousin and I, you guys know me well enough to know that I would say that, I can get in there. I don't know. It's not that bad, And so we loaded up our stuff. We started hiking. They told us we left at 8 o'clock in the evening. They said it was going to be about 10 to 11 hours till we get to the village. We hiked all night long and got there at about 7:30 the next morning. So it was a little over 10 hours. And the best way that I can describe it is, well, first I would say that it was far beyond, as far as the challenge of getting there, what I thought it would be. The first 3.5 to 4 hours we hiked straight up. We went up 3,400 feet. And it was, you have to, I'm going to show you guys some pictures just so you can kind of grasp just a little bit, but there's no flat spots anywhere up there. And these people live there. They don't know their ages, they don't know their birthdays. In the entire village of about 400 people, there was about 4 or 5 people that we know that can read. And they don't need to read. They're farmers. They grow sweet potatoes and yams and beans. That's the only things they grow. They grow them in their fields. And the fields are not a Lancaster County field. They are on the face of a cliff, literally. And I'll show you guys some pictures where you can see some of the fields. They're literally on a cliff. And that's where they grow their stuff, and they gather it up, and they put it on their heads, and they hike it out to a market. It's about an 8-hour hike. And they drop them, they go and sell their stuff there and come back, and that's their lives. Some of the houses that we stayed at, the closest water was about a 45-minute hike. They took 5-gallon buckets down, filled it up with water, put it on their heads, and carried it back to their house, about a 45-minute walk. And so yeah, it's the most remote, crazy place that I've ever been to, I've ever seen. And hiking in, we got in about 8 hours, and this was actually really miraculous. I started getting really, really bad cramps, and because we had been awake all day and hiked all night, our bodies were starting to just like shut down, literally, in that we were just tired, and we had hiked. Yeah, it's some of the most insane stuff I've ever hiked. And so we were way back in. I was starting to get cramps and stuff, and I shared that with the team, and several other people had the same way. And we'd stop for short 5-10-minute breaks, and everyone would fall asleep. And, well, at least the Americans did. The Haitians were fine, but we'd do these breaks, and we'd fall asleep and get cramps. And it was actually really awesome because I was getting really, really bad cramps. So we stopped for a break, and it was just almost like someone had been praying for us, because it was instantly all the cramps completely left my body. I didn't have a cramp again the rest of the trip. We drank a whole bunch of strong sugar drinks, as much as we could, to give ourselves energy to get in there. But it was just, there's no amount of exaggeration that I could give you that would be over exaggerated. It really is, it's crazy. I've never seen anything like it. But what was amazing too is this dude carried a generator on his head for 10 hours. And the stuff that we were hiking, there was places where I had to go on my hands and knees just to get up. Like it was all but a cliff. Like the trail would go up and then get to this cliff, and you had to like climb up and then get to the top and then keep going. You climb up again and you just go up all the way up to the top and then go back down about 1,000 feet and then hike up again. And that's just what we hiked in. But this dude did that with a generator on his head, and he only put it down maybe 4 times on the way in. And I thought about it. I was like, for me, if I had this thing on my head, I would if I fell even a little bit. The thing was, the trail was on, you had a cliff, and then it was trail, and then cliff. So if you trip and fall, you're not going to make it. Like, you're going to fall. There's probably 500 to 1,000 feet straight down to the bottom of it. It was just crazy stuff. And so if you fall or trip, the generator's going down the cliff. Maybe you can hang on, but the thing... So I fell and tripped probably I don't know, probably 500 times on the way in. Because like it's slippery and it's crazy. And this dude didn't trip one time. Or at least we still had dinner when we got back there. So it's just absolutely crazy. But I wanted to share that, and then I'm going to pass this picture around. This is a picture of one of the houses that they lived in, where we built a metal. We put a metal roof on. What they did was they built a wooden frame with machetes, and then we just went and put metal on the top of it. So this is what a family of, there was a mom and dad and 4 kids that lived in this house. So you can just kind of pass it around. Look at that picture there. These tarps were ones that were donated from an organization here called USAID. They donated into the village, and then the people carried the tarps from there into the house and put it over their house just so that they could try to stay dry for the rain and stuff. But the reason that I want to share some of this stuff with you is I really just want to share some of the things that I learned. We hear about places like this, and even now, you guys, you hear about a place like this, and there really is no way I can explain it to you until you go and see it. But at the same time, what I really want us to do is just really think about some of the ways that we consider ourselves blessed. And then also how a blessing isn't just something to be taken for granted, and that a blessing enables us to do something. It's a means for us to do more. It's not a means to be lazy. We see a person who carries a 5-gallon bucket for an hour to just get water every day. We would consider that pretty hardcore. And for ourselves, we'd say, wow, we're so blessed in that I can just go to a spigot over there and turn it on and I get water. And so when we take that, we say, wow, that's such a blessing. Well then, is that blessing something that I just take for granted and I just say, wow, that's really nice. I'm so blessed. But me being blessed with that, in what ways does it enable me then to go and help people who are in situations like that? Or maybe not like that, but even people in situations who don't have what you have. I would even venture to say that we've been blessed so much so that we can be a blessing that much more to people. Not so that we can live in ease. I don't believe that God's blessed the United States or blessed Jen and I with a house with running water and all those things just so that we have running water. I believe that He's blessed us with that so that Jen and I can go and put roofs on these houses for these people. I believe that God's blessed us with those things so that we can go and we can help a person who's living on the streets. I believe God's blessed us so that we have what it takes to go and bless people. People ask us sometimes, why would you move to Africa? Why would you move to Africa and be missionaries there for a couple of years? Why would you do that when here in the United States there's so many people that have the same kind of needs? When there's so many non-Christians in the United States, why would you travel all the way to Africa? Why would you travel all the way to Haiti and do those things for those people when your next door neighbors around here have some of those problems? And that's a good question. But really the best way that I can answer that question is that, I'm willing and able to go and help those people, and not everyone is. We're willing and able to move to Africa for a couple of years and minister to people there because they need it. And there's blessings that we have in the United States that those villagers would consider it to be blessings, where here we would consider it to be something that's, it's terrible. You don't have hot water in your house. Here we would consider that being something that's, that's pretty brutal, not having hot water in your house. There are people living in the world who don't have any water at all. We would consider it pretty primitive to be in a house that has no hot water. Much less a house that has no water at all. Much less a house that you have to hike an hour for to get water. And so I guess what I'm processing, and I don't have all the answers. This is just the kind of things that came up in my mind when we were on this trip. And so don't come to me afterwards and ask me all kinds of questions about different things, because I really still don't know. I'm just sharing with you guys the things that I've been processing over the last couple of days and over the time that I was there. And it's just asking myself, with all the things that I've been blessed with, what kind of things can I go and be a blessing to other people with, with those things, or whatever, I don't know, But the reason that we can move to Africa and be a blessing to those people, I believe, is because God chose us to be born in the United States. I believe that Jen and I were born here, were raised the way that we were, are married for the purpose, and we've been blessed with so many things over the last 10, 12, 15, 20 years of our lives, we've been blessed with so many things. And I believe that those blessings, God's blessed us to enable us to go on this trip. Because there are people that need to know Jesus, that have never met Jesus, that are living in situations that I have the skills and the skill sets to help them. I have the means. I know people here that can give to projects for that stuff. I have connections. The Lord's put me in a place where we know people who want to help. And I believe that the reason for that isn't so that I can sit here and say, wow, I'm so blessed. But yeah, to recognize that, but then to take it a step further and then to take it and be a blessing to people who don't have it. So this is just some of the things that I've been processing. And you know, in this village, there's about 300 to 400 people there. And there's a pastor that can read, and he's the leader of the entire community. He moved there like years, 20, 30, 40 years ago. He moved up there. I didn't actually get the exact date, but he lived there for a long time. So the entire village, the person who runs the village, like basically call it the mayor, is the pastor. And then all the leaders for the entire community are the elders of the church. And it was interesting. The one guy, this is kind of a funny story. The one guy was like, he was in front of us. He knew all of us could read, and the pastor could read. We were looking at the list of names that we had to do the houses for the next 10 houses, and we were looking at the list of names. And he said, yeah, I want to see that. And we all knew he couldn't read. So he took the paper, and he's standing there, and he's looking at it. We're like, he can't read. What's he looking at? So the brother, he's making it look like he can read because he feels a little bit bad. So we peeped over. Jason just looked over his shoulder, and he was holding the paper upside down. So we knew he wasn't reading it. So it's just interesting. Like you see that and say, wow, like how can he be successful? But he has a wife. He has 6 kids. Really successful farmer back in there. He makes a good living back in there. And so yeah, I was really challenged with some of those things. This aspect also of blessing and laziness. I was challenged with this. Really, we're just glad that we don't have to work hard sometimes. Does that make sense? In the United States, in the way that we live here, you can be lazy and do pretty well. As far as surviving. Actually, you could probably be lazy and really actually do well in light of surviving. But back in this place, if you're lazy, you die. You're not going to survive. The lazy people don't survive. And someone asked me this question before I went. They said, why in the world would people live there then? If it's so hard to live there, if it's so brutal, why in the world are they living there? But see, I realized when we were there, these people love it there. They don't view it as hard work. But then also, they love the fact that no one can be lazy. Because it brings a certain aspect to the culture that they love about hard work. And the blessing that they get from working hard. They love that. And they love the fact that you can't be lazy. And so then I thought about this. I was like, wow, how often are the blessings that I would consider myself having here, my own laziness speaking? Is it really just a huge blessing that I can eat Twinkies whenever I want? Or is it just my own laziness that says I just want to have what I want? Just this aspect of working hard in this village that has created a community of people that's absolutely amazing. All the people that helped us hike in all of our gear, the guy that carried the generator on his head for 10 hours, he didn't even get a house on this trip. He won't get a house probably for the next 2 trips because he lives too far back in. So he'll get one eventually, but what we did was we started closer and we're working our way back in further as we do the project. We do it one section at a time. And he didn't even get a house, but he loved to help. If I was working hard to survive, it would be a stretch for me to go carry a generator on my head for a team that's not even putting a roof on my house, There's such a perspective of what work really is. They just love to do stuff. It's just amazing. I was so amazed by these people. It was awesome. But what I'm processing then is, like I said, how often is it a blessing that we have so many comfortable things around us? But how often is it actually not a blessing, but it's really just our laziness speaking in that I don't want to work hard? It's so nice, for for me to have whatever I want right at my fingertips. But then to live a life that's more disciplined, to say no to things, it's harder work to do that. So yeah, I'm just sharing the things that I'm processing here. Another area that I was really challenged was spiritually when I was back in this village. The last house that we stayed in, we were on our way out and we put a roof on the house and we stayed there at that place. And that night we were sitting around a fire and all the kids were around, everyone was around, they were just sharing stuff. They spoke Creole, I didn't understand a word they said, but my brother would translate for me. And the lady at one point just said, wow, she just said, I wanted to share with you guys, I really just feel like, Jesus showed up here today. She said they've never had visitors at their house, stay a night. They've never had people stay overnight at their house. And she was so immensely just blessed that we would consider their house to stay there. So she made us food for the evening and gave us a big meal and all kinds of stuff. And just a really, really awesome lady. So then we all went to sleep. And I remember waking up, it was like 3 or 4 in the morning. And I heard this lady just going to town. She was talking or something, and she was speaking Creole, so I didn't know what she was saying. But she was just intense, like if you'd have a really intense conversation with someone is what she sounded like she was doing. And she's just going, and I didn't really know what she was saying. I was like, that's a little weird. So I just went back to sleep again. The next morning I woke up, and my brother, he says, did you hear that lady praying last night? I said, what? She was praying. He said, yeah, she was praying. And he knows Creole, so he knew what she was saying. And I was like, well, what kind of things was she saying? What was she praying? He said, well, all he heard her doing, or the times that she was praying, was thanking Jesus for stuff. She was thanking Jesus that a team would come and put a metal roof on her house. She even said in her prayer, she said, God, if this is a dream, don't wake me up. She felt like she was dreaming that someone would come and put a metal roof on her house. And she shared all these, and Jason was just shared with us that she prayed for us. She prayed that as we leave, we'd be safe. She prayed that our wives back home would be blessed. She prayed that, Jason said several things that she prayed for. And I was like, you know what? There wasn't a single thing that he mentioned, and I asked him, and he said he didn't hear anything where she prayed something for herself. And this is a lady who lives in a mud hut with a thatched roof, who walks, she hiked the day before 45 minutes for a 5-gallon bucket full of water and made them hot for us so we could bath ourselves. And she's thanking God for everything that, for what we do, for the things that we've done for their team, and praying for us. And, if anything, I would have said I wanted to pray for them. Because in my mind, I would think, wow, your life's so hard. But in their mind, it's not at all. They love it. They love living there. It's just the shift in mindset that it requires to see life the way that those people see life is something I want so bad. I want that so bad. These people I had such a, it was awesome to see these people like that. So then another question that I asked myself was, is happiness based on the stuff that you have and the comfort that you have? Or is the joy and happiness and contentment that you feel in your life coming from your relationship with Jesus Christ? Because I believe that's why these people can live the way that they live and be so happy. I believe it's because their happiness isn't based on the stuff that they have, or their happiness isn't based on how hard they have to work to get water. Their happiness is based on the fact that they have everything they need to survive, and to survive well. No one was starving. They have everything they need to live, and they're happy, But the amount of things that I think I have to have, the amount of comfort that I think I have to live in for me to be happy, that's another thing that really challenged me. In the process that Jen and I have been going through and moving out of our house and living in an apartment and selling our stuff, I'm realizing more and more how much stuff we had that we didn't need to have. That we felt like we needed to have, but we really actually didn't need to have. And then actually how happy we are. There's nothing that we sold that has made us oh shoot, now we're going to have to be sad for the next couple of months because we don't have that anymore. There was not a single thing that we sold that was like that. But there was times when we sold something where it was hard to let go of. Something as simple as selling your TV. It can be a little bit hard because, someday you come back, you have a family, you might want that, But it's something that you don't need. And so, it's just processing these things. And so how often do we spiritually rate ourselves based on our physical conditions that we're living in? How often do I do I rate how much God loves me based on how much comfort He's given me, in the place that He has me in, and whether or not He supplies for me to have a pizza, rather than some sweet potatoes that come from a garden that you've planted. How much do I rate my relationship with Jesus, or how well I'm doing based on how comfortable I am? Because I would venture to say that none of those people rate even remotely how they're doing spiritually based on their physical conditions. Because if that was the case, why, I would say their physical conditions are pretty brutal. And so if they rate how blessed they are in Jesus Christ off of how much He's given them physically, oh boy, I don't know that God, you would venture to say, I don't know how much God loves you. But I would venture to say that the blessing that comes from the Father doesn't always have to be in something physical. It doesn't have to be in how comfortable He makes you. I was just challenged with some of this stuff. Another aspect is worship. Like with this lady. Are we driven to worship the Father because of what we lack or because of what we've been given? Are you driven to pray for an hour by yourself because of things that you don't have that you want, or because of things that you have that you're so happy God's given you? This lady was praying at 3 o'clock in the morning because she had been given something. I would probably found 15, 20, 30, 50 different things that she could have prayed for, asking God for things too. But she wasn't. She was thanking God for the things she was given. And as I was thought about, worship and prayer, it's not always about asking God for things that you want. It's not always about asking God for things that you feel like you need. It's about thanking God for the things that He's given you. It's about thanking God for the things that He's blessed you with. That lady had so little, and yet she was up at 3 a.m. to thank God for every little thing that she had. She was up that time of the night to do that. Are we driven to worship because of the things that we lack, or because of the things that we've been given? Are we worshiping Jesus just because we want the blessing that comes from it? Or are we worshiping Jesus because we love how much He's given us? And I believe that when you shift that paradigm like that, there's such an authentic, pure blessing that comes from the Father, outside of anything physical that He might bring in your life. But a blessing and relationship with Him that comes when you worship the Father because of how thankful you are, rather than how needy you feel. And I read this verse in 1 Timothy 6. I'm just going to read it. It says this: If anyone teaches a different doctrine and does not agree with the sound words of our Lord Jesus Christ in teaching that accords with godliness, he's puffed up with conceit and understands nothing. He has an unhealthy craving for controversy and for quarrels about words, which produce envy, dissension, slander, evil suspicions, and constant friction among people who are depraved in mind, deprived of the truth, imagining that godliness is a means of gain. Then he says something that is just absolutely profound. He says, now there is great gain in godliness with contentment. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can't take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Is it through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs? And as I read this, I don't see the message saying, well, we're supposed to be poor because we're blessed in that, because being rich is a sin or it makes you wander. I believe that the message that we're supposed to get from this is that if you're a person that's been called, who's been rich, who God's blessed you with finances, blessed you with so many things, He's blessed you to be a blessing. Not so that you can be rich, or so that you can be comfortable, or so that you can have everything that you need. I believe that. And there's interesting what he says there. He says, I had to ask myself this question. Godliness, he mentions it there. He says, in verse 6, now there is great gain in godliness with contentment. Well, first, what's godliness? Anybody define what godliness is?
Being like Him.
Being like Him. Yep, right on. I would say godliness is when you live a life that displays the nature and character of God. when everything that you do, godliness, I would say, is a lifestyle that points people to who God is. When everything in your life, to live a godly lifestyle, is when your lifestyle reflects the nature of God. That's what godliness is. So then he says, now there is great gain in godliness with contentment. So what's contentment? What does it mean to be content?
Still in your surroundings and happy there.
Mm-hmm.
Joyful in
Joyful.
the place you are.
Mm-hmm. Joyful, I think, was probably the one that came up for me the most. When I think of the word content, I think of the word joy. Because there's a difference between happiness and joy. Happiness can be altered. It can change. My happiness will go away if someone gives me a lollipop that I don't like. Or, I get a lollipop that looks like grape and I eat it and it's black licorice or something like that. My happiness goes down the drain. But joy is something that's eternal. Joy is something that can't be changed.
You are so married.
Yeah, I am, right?
It used to be Joy was shooting 12-point buck, and now...
Oh, yeah, now it's changing.
Yeah.
Good, that's good.
Now a lollipop.
Oh, shoot. But do you see the difference? Happiness is something that can be taken, but joy is something that can never be taken. So when I think of the word content, I think of that word joy, and that it's something that can't just be changed. It's more than just, no matter what your situation is, no matter what you think you might be lacking, you're still happy. That's what it means to be content. But there's some power here. He says with godliness with contentment. So I asked myself this question, why is there great gain there? Why is there gain when you have godliness with contentment? And I believe it's because you won't be tempted to satisfy your flesh with anything other than godliness. See, when it's godliness with contentment, your flesh won't be demanding things that you're going to just give it. When it's godliness with contentment, then what happens is your flesh no longer has as much of a voice. The sin, sometimes that part of us that just wants to be rebellious or to do things, that temptation aspect that the devil brings into our lives, it has less of a voice when we're living in godliness with contentment. And basically what happens is, you're no longer tempted to satisfy your flesh with anything other than your relationship with Jesus Christ. Your contentment comes from godliness. And godliness comes from relationship. See, often another thing that happens in our culture is we're tempted to seek godliness first. And if you're godly enough, then you're Christian. Or if you're godly enough, then you achieve some spiritual status where now you can walk in miracles. Or now you can walk in some certain level of power and authority as a leader. If you achieve a certain amount of godliness, if you do things just right, then you're a Christian. But that is so twisted. I would say the first thing that needs to happen is relationship with Jesus Christ. And that's the gospel. And then from that place, you achieve godliness. Relationship comes first, godliness comes next. You bring godliness in with contentment, and you have everlasting joy to eternity, all the way through the entire of your life.